Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Great to see you again for this final session on the study of the Bhagavad Gita. We'll start with a short Mangala Charanam and then a little summary of what we've looked at so far, and then we'll look at Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of the heart. So please make yourselves comfortable, any position. Roll your shoulders a little bit if you feel that helps you. And focus on your own breathing. Om Ajnanatimidandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militang Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. He Shri Guru Jnanadadina Bandho Swananda Data Karunaika Sindho Brindavanasi Nahitavatara Prasidha Radha Pranaya Prachara Yuvatinang Yata Yoni Yunancha Yuvato Yata Mano Bhiramate Tadvan Mano Bhiramatang Tvai Rasang Prashang Santu Kavitvanishta Brahmamritang Veda Shiro Nivishta Vayang Tugunja Kalita Vatang Sang Grihita Vangshang Kamapi Shrayama Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Sahishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Thank you very much. In many mantras you'll see the word Namaha. Namaha means not me. So what it refers to is relinquishing the identity, false identity in our story. So over the years you'll come across many mantras that end in Namaha. It's the part of the mantra where we abandon false stories and identities. So far we started off by looking at the teachings of the Dharma Code. Of course, the 4 principles of the Dharma Code are also yamas and niyamas, so it's directly connected to Patanjali. Then we had a look at an overview of the Gita as a wisdom text. We saw how the Gita has 18 systems of yoga, and you can pick whichever system best suits your nature. We then decided to focus on a few very important systems of yoga, especially the very first system, which is Vishad Yoga. Vishad Yoga is the yoga of crisis. So it's a system of yoga that helps us go through very difficult challenges in our life. Then we had a look at Karma Yoga, the yoga of skillful action. It's a system of yoga that helps us find deep fulfillment in what we do every day. So that what we do every day as part of our work, it itself becomes our yoga practice. Our work, our daily work, our job, whatever it is that we do, becomes our yoga practice. Like that, our yoga practice is not simply recovery yoga, where we have a really difficult day that has no meaning, and then we go to the yoga studio to do some yoga just to feel alive for a short time. But rather, the field of action, Kurukshetra, the field of action, becomes our yoga mat. Then we had a look at Sankhya Yoga. Now, one aspect of Sankhya that we didn't look at, but we touched on earlier, is the yoga of the 3 Gunas. That's also part of Sankhya. So the teachings of the Gita you can summarize them in 4 broad statements. I'm not sure if you can read this, or it looks like a spider has crawled across the board. But the first one is set out on the journey of the soul. That represents Vishad Yoga, especially. Because Vishad Yoga, when we face difficulties and challenges in our life, it can set us on the journey of the soul. So Arjuna's journey Arjuna's journey of wisdom begins with his crisis. So the closest word in Sanskrit to spirituality is Atmagati. Atmagati means the journey of the self. Whatever helps us forward on the path of the soul, on the journey of the self, is spirituality. The second broad teaching is let every step be its own reward. And that's represented by the first 6 chapters of the Gita, which are mostly on karma yoga. When we follow karma yoga, when we practice karma yoga in our life, we gain deep fulfillment, not by looking for and being attached to outcomes, but our very activities, the very actions we take are deeply fulfilling in themselves. Let discernment be the warrior's sword. That's the sword of Sankhya, which we spoke about yesterday. The sword cuts away illusion and false perceptions and attachments. And then, so this is the last 6 chapters of the Gita. Now we're going to the middle 6 chapters of the Gita, which is the most confidential part of the Gita. So these are Krishna's words. He describes Bhakti as his most confidential teaching to Arjuna. There are 5 levels of teachings in the Gita. Regular teachings. So an example of regular teachings is the teachings on a yogi or a yogini doesn't eat too much or eat too little, doesn't sleep too much, sleep too little. Then you have confidential teachings, secret teachings. And then the next level is more secret. Then the 4th level is the most secret. Krishna says, this is the most secret. And then Krishna then gives some more teachings. He finishes the Gita, and then Krishna says, it looks like the conversation is over. And then Krishna says, okay. He gives him a little bit, some further teachings, and he says, these are the most secret of all secrets. So why is it that we are doing the first chapter, then the first 6 chapters, the last 6 chapters, and then why the middle 6 last? It's because in Western culture, the ultimate teachings we're leading to, we put them at the end, don't we? But in ancient India, you place the most confidential teachings in the center. You'll find that in many texts, like the Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavad Purana also. The most confidential, the most secret teachings are placed in the center. I think maybe it's so, someone picks up the book, they'll flick through the beginning and flick through the end. If they don't have a genuine interest, they'll miss the middle. So today we're going to focus on the teachings of devotion, the teachings of sacred love. So the word, we don't, in English or in Spanish maybe, we don't have many words for love. It's a small, very beautiful word, but it has to do a lot of work. The word is often misused, and it has lost, in many cases, it has lost its sacred meaning. So we'll use the word love to mean, I love ice cream, or I love football, to friends that we love, to a partner who we have deep feelings for, to love of a community, or even love for all people. The word love has to do so much work, and we don't know we may not know what it's referring to. We have many words for a society. You can understand the consciousness of a society or the thinking of a society by their language. And likewise, language will influence the mentality or consciousness of a society. It works both ways. That's why we put a little bit of focus in the Sanskrit words, actually. Because then the consciousness of the ancients, of the rishis, can more easily be transferred. So in our culture, we have many words for, say, coffee, right? So many: frappuccino, cappuccino, latte, mocha. The list is endless. It would be hard. We would need 2 or 3 of these boards if we wrote it all down. So we're a little bit like a coffee culture. But we have only 1 or 2 words for love or affection. Even the ancient Greeks, they had 6 words for different types of love. The last time I counted in Sanskrit, in the culture of ancient India, there are over 20 words, and they describe different qualities of love. In fact, what's very interesting is that the ancient texts, including the Gita, speak of the purity of love. The implication is that what passes as love can be contaminated by selfishness, the desire to control, by jealousy, by false perceptions. So the practice of developing pure love, which we can call sacred love, is the path of Bhakti Yoga. So we'll have a look just a little bit first as an introduction, the difference between sacred love and love that's very tied to our small human story. So we'll call love that's bound within our story. So at the very beginning, the first verse, Dharma kshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsavaha. Dhritarashtra also has love for his son Duryodhana, but that love is completely tied up in his small human story. So it leads to enmity and conflict. So we'll call that small love. And here we will look at sacred love. So let's have a look first at the qualities of small love, because we've had personal experience in our life of what small love can be like. Now, we're looking here in two directions, but love can be anywhere along this continuum. So small love, one of the most important and obvious characteristics is that it's highly conditional. If someone supports our story, our identity in our story, we think of them as a friend and we have love for them. If someone acts in a way that threatens our story or undermines our identity, we withhold our love. Small love is also, I will say, accidental. We talk about falling in love, don't we? Right? It's accidental. Small love is not like a practice. We don't think of it as a practice, we don't think of it as an ability. It's something that just happens or doesn't happen. And in fact, we often think that it's dependent on finding the right person. So we think of ourselves as a package of qualities, and we put a value on what we think that package of qualities is. And we do things in our life to try and increase our value. Look better, have a larger salary, whatever it is. And then we look for someone that we think represents a good exchange. What happens is that other people become secondary characters in our own story in which we're the dominant person. So what happens then is that love is fleeting, it's temporary. What happens is that as soon as the conditions are no longer met, the relationship breaks, we look for another partner or someone else to love. We look for another accident. So that's why you have the most incredible, I personally find it astonishing. We will see two people who will declare their undying love for each other one day, and maybe a few months or years later, they will declare their undying hatred for that person in the divorce courts. So it's also based on false perceptions, because it's locked within our small story. We're not seeing other people on the level of the sacred self, the level of the soul. Rather, we're looking at them as by their external qualities and how those qualities can serve us. And then the last one, it's limited to a small circle. In other words, it's limited to a small circle of friends and relatives. It's not a love that extends to all beings. Some people, they try to increase that circle. So they try to increase the extent, the scope of their love and affection for a community or a nation. But because it's still locked within our small story, we think of my nation and your nation. Like Dhritarashtra, the Kurus and the Pandavas, the fight between two nations. So the quality of sacred love is in every single respect its opposite. It's a love that is unconditional. And it's not accidental. It's actually, it's an ability, an innate ability that we can develop. And when we develop it, it doesn't extend just to one or two people. Automatically, we love all beings. It doesn't depend on finding the right person. Every person is worthy of being loved, including ourselves. Because it's not conditional, it will not break, but it's a love that is permanent. And it's not based on false perception. Actually, when the Sanskrit word for sacred love is bhakti. When Krishna first introduces bhakti in the Gita, it's in a section of the Gita on realized knowledge. In other words, on wisdom. In other words, rather than being based on false perception, on lack of knowledge, that quality of love, sacred love, is the heart of wisdom. And as mentioned, it's not limited to a small circle, but it extends to all beings. So, the question becomes, well, someone might say, well, that's, this is the way saints love. I'm not a saint. Seems like a little bit too good to be true, maybe. But Arjuna's not a saint. He's not a renunciant. He's not a saint. He's a warrior. This is a type of love we can culture as a form of yoga. Anyone can do it. So today we'll have a look. Bhakti is a big subject, but we'll have a look at some of the key teachings that Krishna gives to Arjuna. When you see beyond the physical. That's why Krishna, at the very beginning of the Gita, he teaches Arjuna Sankhya to try and help Arjuna look more deeply beyond the outward reality, beyond the field of perception. Someone who develops sacred love, they will look upon all people equally. But someone if we're lost within our small story, we start thinking very much in terms of body identities. And we will tend to think of people in three ways. I'm going to express it strongly. I know it's more nuanced. Those who help us, we will think of them as friends. Those who hinder us, we will think of them as enemies. And those who don't help us or hinder us, we will think of them as irrelevant. But someone who if we develop sacred love in our life, everyone is relevant. There's a space in our heart for everyone. Everyone is family, even those we haven't met yet. That kind or quality of love is what the soul is searching for. We're all ready to love and be loved. It's our nature. And when we are able to, through yoga, when we're able to find a quality of love that transcends our human story, we find deep fulfillment because we don't belong to this human story. If you remember, the Atman is beyond time and space. We're not part of this field of perception, actually. So purity of love means love that is not contaminated by the field is not disturbed by the field of perception. Another way of putting it, it's the Atman finding its true nature. Now, Krishna has given Arjuna many teachings already. Karma yoga, the yoga of action. Gyan yoga, the yoga of the mind. Sankhya, about discernment. Krishna has explained to Arjuna how to control the senses and mind. But Arjuna is still not satisfied. So Krishna then gives him his most confidential teachings, the yoga of the heart. We've looked more powerful than the mind, more powerful than the physical body, and more powerful than control of the senses is the heart. So this is about how to apply our heart in our yoga practice, which is our most powerful faculty. So we invest over the course of our life, we invest so much energy and time into improving our intellect, don't we? The whole educational system, which is, people may spend decades in it, is for improving the mind. But there's very little to help us improve the quality of our heart. There are no schools for that, except Yoga Mandir and all the yoga studios you have. So sometimes, we might say, oh, I'm a yogi, I'm a yogini. But actually a yogi or a yogini is a very elevated stage. We're more like practitioners of yoga. A true yogi or a yogini is someone who sees the happiness of others. They value it as their own happiness. And they see the suffering of others as their suffering. So we can, if we're locked within our story, we are the opposite to that. Dhritarashtra is the opposite. So when we're the opposite, then when someone, even our friend, achieves something very good or gets something very good, we'll congratulate them, but secretly we feel a bit bad. We wish we had that. And if our competition is not doing well, secretly we're elated. We may not reveal that, but we may feel that way. So yogi is a yogi or a yogini inverts that way of thinking. And that inversion moves us from the direction of viyoga to the direction of yoga. In other words, anything, any practice, any way of being that increases this mood of I and mine, like Dhritarashtra in the first verse, is the path of viyoga, the path against yoga. And yoga is a current that goes in the opposite direction. So let's have a look now at some of the main teachings of Bhakti Yoga. The first teaching is engage your heart in your yoga practice. So sometimes we may not be very aware of our own heart. We may place a lot more emphasis on our intellect. We may not even remember what the heart is for. It's like a dead organ, like the appendix. We don't know what it's for. But if we know that all systems of yoga are intended to awaken our hearts, it will change the way that we practice our yoga. So ultimately, even the practice of asana is intended to awaken our ability to love. So we can become more conscious of the state, the condition of our own heart. Is our yoga practice softening our heart or hardening our heart? If we are doing any spiritual practice and it's hardening our heart, something is wrong with our practice. It's not yoga, but viyoga. So this actually helps us to differentiate between any form of practice or any path. If it creates the divisions of Dhritarashtra, then it's viyoga. If it creates unity and affection for all beings, then it's yoga. The second teaching on bhakti, or the yoga of devotion, is widen your circle of love. Widen your circle. So to help me understand this second principle of widen your circle, there's an ancient story from the texts of India. So there was a boy named Gautam, and he studied under his teacher, who was a rishi. Gautam's teacher lived in a beautiful ashram that was surrounded by mango trees. There were many bushes and trees with fragrant jasmine, and peacocks would dance in the open spaces. So Gautam's teacher decided that he needed to go on a journey for some days. So he told the young Gautam, this particular tree, the Parijata tree, is very dear to me. I use it for my daily worship. Please look after it carefully, especially its flowers. So Gautam's teacher went on his way, and the young Gautam decided he was going to look after the tree as best as he could. So he got water from the river, and he began sprinkling it on all the flowers. I don't know if you've ever seen a Parijata flower in a picture or in a drawing. It's an exquisite type of jasmine. It's completely white with a center that is bright orange like the sun. In India, it has great symbolic significance. So what happened is that in the evening, when the sun began to set, all the Parijata flowers began to bloom. And the fragrance of those flowers was celestial. So Gautam was very pleased. He went and took rest, and in the morning he returned to the Parijata tree. When he returned, all the flowers that had bloomed had fallen from the tree and were lying on the ground like a carpet of flowers. The young boy became very worried. He began to look after the flowers with even greater care. He also cleaned all of the leaves. He thought, maybe someone is coming at night and disturbing the tree, so I will keep vigil. Now, as soon as the sun began to set, all the buds opened up. Flowers of Parijata everywhere. And then he stayed there the whole night. No one came. Then as soon as the sun began to rise on the eastern horizon, all the flowers that had blossomed, one by one, began dropping from the tree. A few days later, Gautam's teacher came back from his journey. Gautam explained everything that had happened. The teacher said, I asked you to look after the Parijata tree just for that reason. So I could share with you the yoga teachings of Parijata. So Gautam's teacher began to explain that there was once a king who had a beautiful daughter. Her name was Parijata. This young princess fell in love with Surya, the god of the sun, as he was riding his chariot across the sky. Surya propositioned her, leave your kingdom and be mine. So Parijata shed her royal robes and ascended to the sky with Surya. But after some time, Surya tired of her and became cold. Abandoning her, Surya fled in the sky, and the young Parijata died of a broken heart. The king, who was filled with sorrow, cremated the princess's body. From her ashes there arose a single tree with the purest of white flowers, each containing a blazing orange heart. Since the tree can't bear the sight of the sun, her flowers open only after the sun has left the sky. And upon the touch of the sun's first rays at dawn, all her flowers immediately fall to the ground and die. There are 3 teachings of Parijata. So the first one is about love, loss, and heartbreak. The love of this world is ephemeral. If the sun could witness the true beauty of Parijata, he would never be able to leave her. But Parijata reveals her beauty at night, which is the only place that the sun can never go. So every time the sun crosses the sky, it sees only a pitiable tree and a carpet of fallen flowers. Gautam's teacher continued, our beauty is also hidden. The beauty of the soul can't be seen with the external eye or by the light of the sun. For those who haven't yet been able to see with the eyes of love, the soul remains unseen. This is the first teaching of Parijata, the teacher said. For that reason, Parijata is known in India as the tree of sorrow. Gautam asked, what's the second teaching? Gautam's teacher said, come back tomorrow. And I'll tell you. So Gautam had a restless night. He wondered how much of beauty in life was unseen by him, just like the sun. So he eager to know the next teaching, he came again to the teacher's ashram. The rishi explained, the aim of Bhakti Yoga is to expand our love by deepening it and widening it. There are 2 ways to do it. The first is to try and direct our love to every individual in our life. That's like watering the individual buds and leaves of the tree. It's a well-meaning approach, but not without its limitations. There will always be buds and leaves that we're unable to see or reach, and we'll tend to look after those buds and leaves that are close to us and neglect those who are beyond our immediate reach. Instead of focusing on the individual buds and leaves, we can focus on the tree's root, which is the source of the entire tree. If we water Parijata's root with love, we automatically nourish the whole tree. In other words, the water of our love and affection will flow to every part of the tree. So in Bhakti Yoga, we widen our circle of love by directing it to the source. The sages and mystics explain that the soul of all souls is the root of the tree of life. We're each a spark of the divine. Our own individual consciousness is a ray of the supreme consciousness. And our existence depends on this supreme consciousness, just like the leaves and flowers of a plant depend on its root. So the root of the tree of life in the texts of India has many names. In the Bhagavad Gita, the soul of all souls is Krishna, present in the heart of each of us, the universal teacher. Actually, all wisdom is contained already within our heart, because Krishna is in our heart. Other names, if you look at the 1,000 names of Vishnu, one of them is Vriksha, the tree of life. One of them is Vishvam, the universe. Another one is Vishvatma, the soul of the universe. A little detail about the Sanskrit language. Sanskrit doesn't actually have names for individual things in the same way as English or Spanish. So in English, for example, we might have the word lion. The word lion doesn't mean anything, it just denotes a particular animal. In Sanskrit, everything is a description. So one of the words for lion is keshari, because it signifies the color of a lion. So because of that color, the animal is called keshari. Have any of you ever used saffron? The name for saffron is also keshari. Keshari because it's the same color. So you can only know what a sacred text is referring to by context and by having a teacher. So the first Indologists who came from Germany and England, they translated the Upanishads. It's a mess, a lot of it, actually. Sorry, it's a mess. So the names of the soul of all souls, the soul of the universe, there are so many names and they describe certain qualities. So you can choose whichever name you want depending on the quality that touches your heart. Should we have a look at the third teaching? Okay. So again, Gautam's teacher said, come back tomorrow. Okay. But come back early in the morning. Gautam came at just before dawn. I missed something from the last teaching. Let me go back a little bit. So Gautam's teacher explained that if we develop sacred love directed at the source of consciousness, automatically we develop love and affection for all beings. If in our practice of bhakti, we are not automatically feel that all living beings are our family, our practice of bhakti is incorrect, is deficient. The teacher said, true yogis see the happiness and suffering of others as their very own. What we just looked at. So the next day, Gautam came to the ashram at dawn, before dawn. The rishi had his eyes closed and was deeply absorbed in meditation. He was sitting under the Parijata tree, facing his deity of Krishna. Gautam sat next to him in silence. He felt an indescribable peace. Then dawn began to approach, and flowers began dropping. Parijata flowers began dropping on both of them and on the deity of Krishna. It was an enchanting sight that took Gautam's breath away. Gautam's teacher explained, Parijata represents the transition from small love to sacred love. Our nature is to love. The soul is constructed and destined to love. And yet the small love and affection of this world is ultimately a source of sorrow. So we can choose which quality of love we hold in our heart. We can transform our small love into sacred love through the alchemical process of Bhakti Yoga. So we don't have time to look at some of the practices of Bhakti Yoga this time. Yeah. But everything that's alive requires food. So what is the food for sacred love? What nourishes it? I asked that question to my teacher, and he replied, loving service and humility. Humility, we tend to think of love as just like an emotion, but actually true love is expressed through service. So you know that the word for service, loving service, is seva. Or is it a long A? Seva. But there's no translation for seva in English. No good translation. Actually, we sometimes say service, but closest in feeling is privilege. Because there's a lot of service that we do where our heart is not present. But when we're really doing seva, it's the greatest honor, the greatest privilege. And the earth on which the tree of bhakti grows is humility. So we started our discussion by looking at Krishna's teachings on humility, and we end today on Krishna's teachings of humility. Humility is the essence of knowledge. May all beings enjoy happiness and the root cause of happiness. For me, it's been an immense honor and privilege to meet all of you. Costa Rica is a small country, so I'm hoping that our paths will cross many times. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to Edgar for inviting me and for arranging this with so many incredible teachers like Eduardo Mata and others who are coming as well. And then a round of applause to all of you for your for participating in this event and making it so successful, and for being the wonderful people that you are and the teachers of yoga that you are.
Simon, very happy to have you here. Your teachings are very special, very deep. They touch us very deeply. So thank you very much for being here with us. Muchas gracias, Simon.